I'm Emma, your host for today. If you're new here, I'd like to let you know that we upload a new English learning video every day to help you improve your English faster, speak more naturally, and communicate with greater confidence. In today's episode, you'll improve your English listening, speaking, vocabulary, pronunciation, and sentence-building skills. Today, we're exploring an important topic that can take your everyday English to a much higher level. Advanced English vocabulary you need to know in real-life conversations. You may already know many basic English words, but sometimes simple vocabulary is not enough to express your exact thoughts, feelings, reactions, and opinions. Fluent English speakers often use more precise and natural words when they talk about work, relationships, decisions, side problems, plans, emotions, and everyday experiences. Throughout this lesson, we'll explore useful advanced vocabulary through clear explanations, natural examples, real-life situations, and speaking exercises. You'll learn what each word means, how it is pronounced, how it is used in natural conversation, and how you can use it confidently in your own sentences. This lesson is not about memorizing difficult or uncommon words. Every word in today's lesson can help you communicate more clearly in daily conversations, workplace discussions, interviews, social situations, podcasts, movies, and many other real-life situations. By the end of this video, you'll understand a wide range of advanced vocabulary and know how to use these words naturally when expressing your thoughts, describing experiences, sharing opinions, and responding to other people. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss more helpful English learning episodes like this one. So, grab a pen and paper, listen carefully, repeat the examples out loud, and let's get started. Let's begin with a word that you will hear often in real-life conversations, especially when people talk about work, study, personal goals, or difficult situations. The word is challenging. Challenging means difficult in a way that requires effort, skill, patience, or determination. It is more natural and often more positive than simply saying that something is hard. For example, you might say, "Learning to speak English confidently can be challenging." This means that the process requires practice and effort. You could also say, "My new job is challenging, but I'm learning a lot." In this sentence, the job is difficult, but the speaker also sees the experience as useful and rewarding. Challenging does not always describe something negative. It can describe an experience that pushes you to improve. Now, listen to this example. "The project was challenging, but completing it gave me a strong sense of achievement." Repeat that sentence out loud. "The project was challenging, but completing it gave me a strong sense of achievement." Now, think about something in your life that requires effort. Complete this sentence out loud. "I find it challenging to..." You might say, "I find it challenging to stay focused when I'm tired." Or, "I find it challenging to speak English in front of a large group." Create your own sentence and say it slowly and clearly. The next word is overwhelmed. Overwhelmed describes the feeling of having too many things to manage, too many thoughts to process, or too much pressure at the same time. This word is very common in conversations about work, family responsibilities, school, travel, and emotional situations. You might say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed with work this week." This means that the amount of work feels difficult to manage. You can also feel overwhelmed by a strong positive emotion. For example, "She was overwhelmed with joy when she heard the good news." In that sentence, the emotion is positive, but it is still very powerful. In daily conversation, people often say, "I'm a little overwhelmed right now." This is a natural way to explain that you need time, support, or space. Imagine that your manager gives you several new tasks while you are already busy. You could say, "I can handle these tasks, but I'm feeling overwhelmed. Could you help me decide which one is the priority?" This sounds honest, respectful, and professional. Repeat after me. I felt overwhelmed because everything happened at once. Again, I felt overwhelmed because everything happened at once. Now, complete this sentence. I felt overwhelmed when, for example, I felt overwhelmed when I had 3 important deadlines on the same day. Think about a real moment from your life and create your own sentence. Now, let's compare challenging and overwhelmed. Challenging usually describes a task, experience, or situation. Overwhelmed usually describes how a person feels. You can say, "The project was challenging, and I felt overwhelmed at first." The project required effort, and the person experienced emotional pressure. Here is another example. Moving to a new city was challenging, and I felt overwhelmed by all the decisions I had to make. Repeat that sentence slowly. Moving to a new city was challenging, and I felt overwhelmed by all the decisions I had to make. This kind of comparison will help you understand not only the meanings of advanced words, but also the correct situations in which to use them. The next word is hesitant. Hesitant means uncertain, nervous, or unwilling to act immediately. When you are hesitant, you pause because you are not completely sure about what to do. For example, I was hesitant to accept the job offer because the office was far from my home. The speaker did not immediately accept the offer because there was a concern. You might also say, "She seemed hesitant to answer the question." This suggests that she paused or looked uncertain before responding. Hesitant is especially useful when talking about decisions, invitations, unfamiliar experiences, and difficult conversations. Instead of saying, "I didn't want to do it because I wasn't sure," you can say, "I was hesitant to do it." Listen to this natural example. I was hesitant at first, but I decided to give it a try. Repeat it out loud. I was hesitant at first, but I decided to give it a try. Now, complete the sentence. I would be hesitant to. You might say, I would be hesitant to make an important decision without enough information. Create your own example. There are 2 common ways to use hesitant. You can say hesitant to before a verb, as in, I'm hesitant to change jobs. You can also say hesitant about before a noun or an activity, as in, I'm hesitant about changing jobs. Both sentences express the same general idea. Repeat these 2 examples. I'm hesitant to move to another city. I'm hesitant about moving to another city. Now, think of one decision that would make you feel uncertain and create both sentence patterns. For example, I'm hesitant to buy the car, and I'm hesitant about buying the car. The next useful word is reasonable. Reasonable means fair, sensible, practical, or acceptable. It is often used when people discuss prices, expectations, explanations, requests, deadlines, and decisions. For example, the price seems reasonable. This means the price is fair and not excessively high. You can also say, that sounds like a reasonable solution. This means the solution is practical and makes sense. Imagine that a coworker says, can we finish this task by Friday instead of Wednesday? You might respond, yes, that seems reasonable. You are saying that the suggestion is fair and realistic. Reasonable can also describe a person who listens and makes fair decisions. For example, my manager is strict, but she's reasonable. This means the manager has high standards but treats people fairly. Repeat after me. I think your request is completely reasonable. Again, I think your request is completely reasonable. Now, create a sentence about money, time, or expectations. You could say, I would rent the apartment if the price were reasonable. The opposite of reasonable is unreasonable. Unreasonable means unfair, unrealistic, excessive, or difficult to accept. For example, they expected us to complete a week of work in one day. That was unreasonable. You might also say, the customer made an unreasonable demand. This means the customer asked for something that was not fair or realistic. Listen to the contrast. A 3-day deadline is reasonable, but a 3-hour deadline is unreasonable. Repeat that sentence. A 3-day deadline is reasonable, but a 3-hour deadline is unreasonable. Now, think of a request that you consider reasonable and another request that you consider unreasonable. Explain both ideas in complete sentences. The next word is reliable. Reliable describes a person, service, object, or source that can be trusted to work well or behave consistently. You might say, she's one of the most reliable people on our team. This means she completes her work, keeps her promises, and can be trusted. You could also say, I need a reliable car because I drive to work every day. In this sentence, reliable means that the car works properly and does not break down often. We can also talk about reliable information. For example, make sure the information comes from a reliable source. This means the source should be trustworthy and accurate. Reliability is important in almost every area of daily life. We need reliable friends, reliable employees, reliable transportation, reliable internet service, and reliable information. Repeat this sentence. You can depend on her because she's extremely reliable. Again, you can depend on her because she's extremely reliable. Now, think of someone you trust. Complete this sentence. I consider this person reliable because... You might say, I consider my coworker reliable because he always finishes his work on time. The phrase depend on is closely connected to reliable. If someone is reliable, you can depend on that person. You can say, I know I can depend on you. This means you trust the person to help you, keep a promise, or fulfill a responsibility. Imagine that two coworkers are discussing an important event. One asks, do you think Daniel can manage the event? The other replies, absolutely. He's organized, experienced, and reliable. This answer shows strong confidence in Daniel. Now, create your own short response using reliable. Imagine that someone asks whether your friend can be trusted with an important responsibility. You could say, yes, she's very reliable, and she always keeps her promises. The next word is inconvenient. Inconvenient describes something that causes difficulty, discomfort, or extra effort. It is commonly used when discussing schedules, locations, transportation, appointments, technical problems, and unexpected changes. For example, the appointment time is a little inconvenient for me. This is a polite way to say that the time creates a problem. You could also say, the store is affordable, but its location is inconvenient. This means that reaching the store requires additional time or effort. Imagine that someone changes a meeting at the last minute. You might say, the new time is inconvenient, but I'll try to make it work. This sounds respectful while still communicating the difficulty. Repeat after me. I'm sorry, but that time is inconvenient for me. Again. I'm sorry, but that time is inconvenient for me. Now, practice making a polite request. Say, would it be possible to choose a more convenient time? Convenient is the opposite of inconvenient. Convenient means easy, suitable, or helpful for your situation. For example, online banking is convenient because I can use it from home. You might ask someone, what time is convenient for you? This is a polite way to ask which time fits the person's schedule. Repeat both sentences. Monday morning is convenient for me. Monday morning is inconvenient for me. Notice how the prefix changes the meaning completely. Now, create your own pair of sentences using convenient and inconvenient. You might say, the location is convenient because it is close to my office. And, the location is inconvenient because there is no public transportation nearby. The next word is flexible. Flexible means able or willing to change according to a situation. It can describe schedules, plans, rules, people, or working arrangements. For example, my work schedule is flexible. This means your starting time, ending time, or working hours can be adjusted. You can also say, we need to be flexible because the situation may change. This means everyone should be willing to modify their plans. A flexible person does not become upset every time something changes. That person can adapt and consider different possibilities. For example, she's easy to work with because she's flexible and open-minded. Imagine that you are planning dinner with a friend. Your friend asks, would you prefer Italian or Mexican food? You could answer, I'm flexible. Either one is fine with me. In this situation, flexible means that you are willing to accept either option. Repeat after me. My plans are flexible, so we can meet whenever you're available. Again, my plans are flexible, so we can meet whenever you're available. Now, complete the sentence, I can be flexible if. For example, I can be flexible if you need to change the meeting time. The next word is specific. Specific means exact, clear, and detailed. It is the opposite of general or vague. For example, if someone says, I need help, the request is very general. You do not know what kind of help the person needs. You might respond, could you be more specific? You are asking the person to provide clearer details. Suppose your manager says, this report needs improvement. You may need more information, so you ask, could you be more specific about what I should change? This is a professional and practical question. Specific can also refer to one particular thing. For example, I'm looking for a specific book. This means you are not looking for just any book. You already have a particular title in mind. Repeat after me. Could you give me a specific example? Again, could you give me a specific example? Now, imagine that someone asks you to describe a problem. Instead of saying, my computer isn't working, be more specific. You could say, my computer turns on, but the screen remains black. That explanation is more useful because it provides clear information. The next word is vague. Vague means unclear, not detailed, or difficult to understand. It is useful when someone has not provided enough information. For example, his instructions were too vague. This means the instructions were not clear enough to follow. You could also say, she gave me a vague answer. Perhaps she responded, but her answer did not contain useful details. Imagine that you ask a coworker when a project will be completed. The coworker says, it'll be ready sometime soon. That is a vague answer because you do not know whether soon means today, tomorrow, or next week. You could politely respond, could you give me a more specific date? This contrast between vague and specific appears constantly in real-life communication. Repeat after me. The description was too vague to be helpful. Again, the description was too vague to be helpful. Now, listen to two answers. The first answer is, I'll call you later. The second answer is, I'll call you at approximately 7 this evening. Which answer is vague? The first one is vague because later does not give an exact time. The second answer is specific. Now, create your own pair of sentences. First, give a vague answer about a meeting, then make the answer specific. You might say, we'll meet sometime next week. That is vague. Then you could say, we'll meet next Tuesday at 10 in the morning. That is specific. Practice saying both sentences out loud. The next word is accurate. Accurate means correct, exact, and free from mistakes. It is commonly used when talking about information, measurements, reports, descriptions, predictions, and details. For example, the information on this website is accurate. This means the information is correct. You could also say, please make sure the address is accurate before you send the package. Even a small error in an address could create a serious problem. Imagine that someone describes what happened during a meeting. You might ask, is that an accurate description of the discussion? You are asking whether the description correctly represents the event. Repeat after me. We need accurate information before making a decision. Again, we need accurate information before making a decision. Now, complete the sentence. It's important to be accurate when. You might say, it's important to be accurate when you complete a job application. The noun form is accuracy. You can say, please check the document for accuracy. This means you should check whether every detail is correct. The opposite is inaccurate. For example, the weather report was inaccurate. This means the prediction or information was not correct. Repeat these three forms: accurate, accuracy, and inaccurate. Now listen to a sentence that uses two forms. The report contained inaccurate information, so we questioned its accuracy. Repeat that sentence slowly. The report contained inaccurate information, so we questioned its accuracy. The next word is appropriate. Appropriate means suitable, acceptable, or correct for a particular situation. This word is often used when discussing clothing, behavior, language, timing, and decisions. For example, jeans may not be appropriate for a formal interview. This means jeans may not be suitable for that particular situation. You can also say, that comment was not appropriate. This means the comment was unacceptable or unsuitable in the situation. Imagine that you need to contact someone about an important issue. You might ask, is this an appropriate time to talk? You are politely checking whether the time is suitable. Repeat after me. We need to choose the most appropriate response. Again, we need to choose the most appropriate response. Now, think about workplace behavior and complete this sentence. It is appropriate to, you might say, it is appropriate to apologize when you make a mistake. Now, complete the opposite sentence. It is inappropriate to, for example, it is inappropriate to interrupt someone repeatedly. The next word is considerate. Considerate describes someone who thinks about other people's feelings, needs, time, and comfort. For example, it was considerate of you to call before visiting. This means the person showed respect by checking before arriving. You might also say, our neighbors are very considerate. They try not to make noise late at night. Their behavior shows awareness of other people. Being considerate can involve small actions, such as arriving on time, listening carefully, offering help, lowering your voice, or respecting someone's personal space. Repeat after me. She's always considerate of other people's feelings. Again, she's always considerate of other people's feelings. A common structure is considerate of. You can say, please be considerate of the other passengers. This means you should think about their comfort and needs. Imagine that you are on a crowded bus. What would a considerate passenger do? A considerate passenger might offer a seat to someone who needs it, avoid playing loud music, and keep personal belongings out of the aisle. Now, create your own sentence using considerate. You might say, my friend was considerate enough to help me when I was busy. The opposite is inconsiderate. An inconsiderate person does not think carefully about how their behavior affects others. For example, it was inconsiderate of him to arrive an hour late without calling. Repeat the contrast. Her message was considerate. His behavior was inconsiderate. The next word is efficient. Efficient means working well without wasting time, effort, energy, or resources. For example, we need a more efficient way to organize these files. The current method may take too much time or create unnecessary work. You can describe a person as efficient. She's extremely efficient and always finishes her tasks on time. This means she works in an organized and productive way. You can also describe machines, systems, and services as efficient. For example, the new heating system is more energy efficient. This means it uses less energy while still working effectively. Repeat after me. This method is simple, practical, and efficient. Again, this method is simple, practical, and efficient. Now, think about your daily routine. What could you do more efficiently? You might say, I could prepare my clothes the night before to make my morning routine more efficient. Do not confuse efficient with effective. Efficient means achieving a result while avoiding wasted time or effort. Effective means successfully producing the desired result. For example, a study method may be effective because it helps you remember vocabulary. It may also be efficient if it helps you learn quickly without wasting time. Listen to this sentence. The new system is effective, but it isn't very efficient. This means the system works, but it may require too much time, money, or effort. Repeat after me. I'm looking for an effective and efficient way to improve my English. Again, I'm looking for an effective and efficient way to improve my English. Now, let's review these words in one realistic situation. Imagine that you have started a new position at work. You could say, my new role is challenging, and I felt overwhelmed during the first week. At first, I was hesitant to ask questions because I wanted to appear confident. However, my manager was reasonable and encouraged me to ask for specific instructions whenever something was vague. She is reliable, considerate, and flexible, which makes it easier to work with her. The office location is convenient, and the team uses an efficient system to organize projects. Because the information is accurate and the expectations are appropriate, I am becoming more comfortable every day. Listen to one more conversational practice exercise and pay attention to how naturally the vocabulary fits into the situation. My new role is challenging, and I felt overwhelmed during the first week. At first, I was hesitant to ask questions because I wanted to appear confident. However, my manager was reasonable and encouraged me to ask for specific instructions whenever something was vague. She is reliable, considerate, and flexible, which makes it easier to work with her. The office location is convenient, and the team uses an efficient system to organize projects. Because the information is accurate and the expectations are appropriate, I am becoming more comfortable every day. Now, it is your turn to practice. Think of a situation from your daily life involving work, study, family, travel, or a personal goal. Try to use at least 5 of the words you learned. You could say, planning my trip was challenging because some of the information online was vague. I felt overwhelmed by the number of choices, so I searched for a reliable source with accurate information. After that, I created a more efficient and flexible travel plan. Pause for a moment and create your own example out loud. Do not worry about making every sentence perfect. The goal is to use the vocabulary actively and connect each word to a real experience. The more often you use these words in meaningful situations, the more natural they will become in your conversations. The next word is adaptable. Adaptable describes a person who can adjust successfully when circumstances, plans, or expectations change. This word is especially useful when talking about work, travel, technology, relationships, and personal growth. For example, you might say, she is adaptable and learns new systems quickly. This means she can respond well to change instead of becoming confused or discouraged. You could also say, you need to be adaptable when you travel, because plans do not always go as expected. In real life, being adaptable means staying calm, thinking clearly, and finding another solution when your original plan no longer works. Repeat after me. Successful people are often adaptable. Again, successful people are often adaptable. Now, complete this sentence. I need to be adaptable when. You might say, I need to be adaptable when my work schedule changes unexpectedly. Create your own example and connect it to a real situation in your life. Adaptable and flexible are closely related, but they are not always identical. Flexible often means willing to change a plan or accept different options. Adaptable means capable of adjusting successfully to new conditions. For example, you might say, my manager is flexible about working hours, but my coworker is adaptable and can work well in any environment. Listen to another comparison. A flexible schedule allows changes, while an adaptable employee responds well to those changes. Repeat that sentence slowly. A flexible schedule allows changes, while an adaptable employee responds well to those changes. The next word is practical. Practical means useful, sensible, and suitable for real situations. A practical idea is not only interesting in theory, it can actually be used effectively in daily life. For example, that is a practical solution to the problem. This means the solution is realistic and likely to work. You can also describe clothing, skills, advice, or decisions as practical. You might say, these shoes are not very fashionable, but they are practical for walking. You could also say, learning how to manage your time is a practical skill. In conversation, practical often contrasts with unrealistic, complicated, or unnecessary. Repeat after me. We need a practical solution that everyone can follow. Again, we need a practical solution that everyone can follow. Now, think of something useful in your daily routine and complete this sentence. One practical way to save time is. You might say, one practical way to save time is to prepare meals in advance. The next useful word is realistic. Realistic means based on what is possible, practical, or likely to happen. If a goal is realistic, it can probably be achieved with the available time, resources, and effort. For example, I want to improve my English, but I need to set realistic goals. This means you should not expect to become fluent overnight. Instead, you might decide to practice for 30 minutes each day. You can also use realistic when discussing expectations. For example, it is not realistic to expect every day to go perfectly. This sentence reminds us that problems and delays are normal. Repeat after me. We need to be realistic about how much time this will take. Again, we need to be realistic about how much time this will take. Now, create your own sentence beginning with, a realistic goal for me is. You might say, a realistic goal for me is to learn 5 useful words every day. The opposite of realistic is unrealistic. Unrealistic means not reasonable, not practical, or unlikely to happen. For example, completing the entire project in 1 hour is unrealistic. You could also say, his expectations were unrealistic. This means he expected more than the situation reasonably allowed. Notice the connection between unreasonable and unrealistic. Unreasonable often emphasizes unfairness or a lack of good judgment, while unrealistic emphasizes what is not likely or possible. For example, the request was unreasonable because it ignored our other responsibilities, and the deadline was unrealistic because the work required several days. Repeat both sentences and notice the difference in meaning. The next word is essential. Essential means completely necessary or extremely important. It is stronger than useful or helpful. For example, clear communication is essential in the workplace. This means a workplace cannot function well without it. You might also say, water is essential for good health, or it is essential to check the details before signing a contract. Essential is common in professional conversations, instructions, advice, and serious discussions. Repeat after me. Regular practice is essential for improving your English. Again, regular practice is essential for improving your English. Now, complete this sentence. It is essential to. You might say, it is essential to get enough rest before an important meeting. A related noun is essential. We often use the plural form, essentials, to refer to the basic things we need. For example, I packed only the essentials for my trip. This means the speaker packed only necessary items, such as clothing, identification, money, and medication. You may also hear the phrase, the bare essentials, which means only the most necessary things and nothing extra. For example, we were moving quickly, so we took only the bare essentials. Practice this phrase. I packed the bare essentials. Again, I packed the bare essentials. The next word is beneficial. Beneficial means helpful or producing a positive result. It is more advanced and precise than simply saying good. For example, regular exercise is beneficial for both physical and mental health. You could also say, the training program was beneficial because it improved my communication skills. In daily conversation, beneficial is often used when discussing health, habits, education, work, and long-term decisions. Repeat after me. Reading every day can be beneficial for your vocabulary. Again, reading every day can be beneficial for your vocabulary. Now, complete this sentence. It would be beneficial for me to. You might say, it would be beneficial for me to practice speaking English before work. Notice the common structure, beneficial for. You can say, this change will be beneficial for the entire team. You may also hear beneficial to, as in, the new system will be beneficial to employees. Both forms are common. Now, listen to this example. The course was challenging, but it was extremely beneficial. This sentence shows that something can require effort and still produce a positive result. The next word is significant. Significant means important, noticeable, or large enough to matter. It is often used to describe changes, differences, improvements, problems, events, and amounts. For example, I have noticed a significant improvement in my listening skills. This means the improvement is clear and important, not small or difficult to notice. You could also say, the company made a significant change to its working policy. In another context, you might say, there is a significant difference between understanding a word and being able to use it naturally. Repeat after me. Daily practice can make a significant difference. Again, daily practice can make a significant difference. Now, think about a positive change in your life and complete this sentence. I have made significant progress in. You might say, I have made significant progress in speaking more confidently. A related adverb is significantly. For example, my pronunciation has improved significantly. This means it has improved by a noticeable amount. Compare these two sentences. I made significant progress, and I improved significantly. In the first sentence, significant describes the noun progress. In the second sentence, significantly describes the verb improved. Repeat both examples out loud. The next word is gradual. Gradual describes something that happens slowly and steadily over time. It does not happen suddenly. For example, improving your vocabulary is a gradual process. This means your vocabulary grows little by little through consistent exposure and practice. You might also say, there was a gradual improvement in his confidence. This means his confidence increased slowly over a period of time. Gradual is useful when discussing learning, recovery, personal growth, business changes, and physical progress. Repeat after me. Real progress is often gradual. Again, real progress is often gradual. Now, complete this sentence. I have noticed a gradual change in. You might say, I have noticed a gradual change in the way I express my ideas. The opposite of gradual is sudden. A sudden change happens quickly and unexpectedly. For example, there was a sudden change in the weather. Compare that with, there was a gradual change in the weather. A sudden change might happen within a few minutes, while a gradual change might happen over several hours. Now, use both words in one sentence. My improvement was gradual, not sudden. Repeat it out loud. My improvement was gradual, not sudden. The next word is consistent. Consistent means continuing in the same way over time or regularly meeting the same standard. It is one of the most important words for discussing habits, performance, learning, and personal development. For example, you need to be consistent if you want to improve. This means practicing once is not enough. You need to continue regularly. You can also say, her work is consistently accurate, or he is a consistent performer. In daily life, consistency often matters more than intensity. Practicing for 20 minutes every day can be more effective than practicing for 4 hours once a month. Repeat after me. Consistent effort creates long-term improvement. Again, consistent effort creates long-term improvement. Now, complete the sentence, I want to be more consistent with. You might say, I want to be more consistent with my speaking practice. The noun form is consistency. For example, the key to progress is consistency. You can also say, I need more consistency in my daily routine. An inconsistent person or system does not perform in the same way regularly. For example, the internet connection is inconsistent. Sometimes it works well, and sometimes it stops completely. Repeat the contrast. Her performance is consistent. His performance is inconsistent. The next word is persistent. Persistent describes someone who continues trying despite difficulty, delay, or failure. A persistent person does not give up easily. For example, she was persistent and eventually solved the problem. You might also say, you have to be persistent when learning a language. This means that mistakes and difficult moments should not stop you from continuing. Persistent can also describe a problem that continues for a long time. For example, I have had a persistent headache all morning. In this sentence, persistent means the problem has continued and has not gone away. Repeat after me. He succeeded because he was patient and persistent. Again, he succeeded because he was patient and persistent. Now complete the sentence. I need to be persistent when. You might say, I need to be persistent when I have difficulty understanding fast English. Do not confuse persistent with consistent. Consistent means doing something regularly and maintaining a stable pattern. Persistent means continuing despite obstacles. A learner can be consistent by studying every day and persistent by continuing even after making mistakes. Listen to this sentence. Consistent practice and persistent effort will improve your English. Repeat it slowly. Consistent practice and persistent effort will improve your English. The next word is determined. Determined means having a strong decision to achieve something and refusing to give up. It describes a clear and powerful attitude toward a goal. For example, she is determined to improve her English before her interview. You could also say, I was tired, but I was determined to finish the task. Determined is often followed by to and a verb. You can be determined to succeed, determined to change, determined to improve, or determined to solve a problem. Repeat after me. I'm determined to reach my goal. Again, I'm determined to reach my goal. Now, complete this sentence. I'm determined to. Say your answer confidently. You might say, I'm determined to speak English without being afraid of mistakes. A related noun is determination. For example, her determination helped her overcome many difficulties. You can also say, success requires patience and determination. Now, listen to the connection among three words we have studied: consistent, persistent, and determined. A determined person has a strong goal. A persistent person continues despite difficulty. A consistent person takes regular action. Together, these qualities can create powerful progress. The next word is reluctant. Reluctant means unwilling or not eager to do something. It is similar to hesitant, but there is a small difference. A hesitant person is uncertain and may need more time to decide. A reluctant person does not really want to do something, even if they eventually agree. For example, I was reluctant to complain because I did not want to create a problem. You could also say, he was reluctant to ask for help. Perhaps he knew that asking for help was necessary, but he did not feel comfortable doing it. Repeat after me. She was reluctant to discuss the issue. Again, she was reluctant to discuss the issue. Now, complete the sentence. I would be reluctant to. You might say, I would be reluctant to lend money to someone I did not know well. Let's compare hesitant and reluctant. Imagine that you receive a job offer in another city. You might be hesitant because you are uncertain whether moving is the right decision. You might be reluctant because you do not want to leave your family and friends. Hesitation comes from uncertainty. Reluctance often comes from a lack of desire. Listen to these examples. I was hesitant because I needed more information. I was reluctant because I did not want to make the change. Repeat both sentences out loud. The next word is cautious. Cautious means careful to avoid danger, mistakes, or unnecessary risk. A cautious person thinks before acting and pays attention to possible problems. For example, you should be cautious when sharing personal information online. You might also say, she is cautious about making large purchases. This means she takes time to compare options and think carefully before spending money. Cautious does not necessarily mean afraid. It often means sensible and careful. Repeat after me. It is wise to be cautious in unfamiliar situations. Again, it is wise to be cautious in unfamiliar situations. Now, complete this sentence. I am usually cautious when. You might say, I am usually cautious when I sign an important agreement. A useful phrase is cautious about. For example, I'm cautious about trusting information from unknown sources. You can also use cautious with, as in, be cautious with your money. Now, compare cautious with hesitant. A hesitant person has difficulty deciding. A cautious person may make a decision, but does so carefully. For example, I was hesitant to invest, so I researched the company. After deciding to invest, I remained cautious and started with a small amount. The next word is aware. Aware means knowing about something or recognizing that it exists. For example, are you aware of the new policy? This means, do you know about the new policy? You can also say, I was not aware that the store closed early. Aware is usually followed by of and a noun, or by that and a complete sentence. For example, she is aware of the problem, and she is aware that the problem may become worse. Repeat after me. I wasn't aware of the change. Again, I wasn't aware of the change. Now, complete the sentence. I recently became aware that. You might say, I recently became aware that. I use the same basic words too often. A related noun is awareness. For example, the campaign raised awareness about online safety. This means it helped more people understand the issue. You might also hear the phrase self-awareness. Self-awareness means understanding your own feelings, habits, strengths, and weaknesses. For example, self-awareness can help you become a better communicator. When you recognize how you speak, listen, and react, you can make more thoughtful choices. The next word is observant. Observant describes someone who notices details and pays close attention to what is happening. For example, she is very observant and notices small changes immediately. You might also say, an observant listener can understand meaning from tone of voice and facial expressions. Observant people often recognize details that others miss. Repeat after me. He is observant and pays attention to detail. Again, he is observant and pays attention to detail. Now, think about a situation in which being observant is useful. You could say, it is important to be observant when driving in heavy traffic. Aware and observant are connected, but they are different. Aware means knowing that something exists. Observant means actively noticing details. For example, you may be aware that your coworker is upset, but an observant person may notice that the coworker is speaking more quietly, avoiding eye contact, and taking longer to respond. Repeat this sentence. I was aware of the tension because I had been observant during the conversation. The next word is subtle. Subtle describes something that is not obvious, strong, or easy to notice. It may require careful attention. For example, there was a subtle change in her tone of voice. The change was small, but meaningful. You might also say, this perfume has a subtle scent. This means the smell is light and not overpowering. In communication, subtle changes in expression, tone, or word choice can reveal how a person feels. Repeat after me. I noticed a subtle difference in his behavior. Again, I noticed a subtle difference in his behavior. Now, complete the sentence. There was a subtle change in. You might say, there was a subtle change in the way she answered the question. The opposite of subtle is obvious. Obvious means easy to see, understand, or notice. Compare these sentences. He made a subtle mistake that few people noticed. He made an obvious mistake that everyone noticed. Repeat both examples. Now, think of a subtle sign that someone is nervous. Perhaps the person speaks faster, avoids eye contact, or moves their hands repeatedly. Create a sentence using subtle. The next word is genuine. Genuine means real, sincere, and honest. It can describe feelings, people, interest, concern, products, and reactions. For example, she showed genuine interest in my ideas. This means her interest was honest and not pretended. You might also say, his apology seemed genuine. This means the apology appeared sincere. In another context, genuine can mean authentic rather than fake. For example, the store sells genuine leather products. Repeat after me. Her concern was genuine. Again, her concern was genuine. Now, complete this sentence. I appreciate people who show genuine. You might say, I appreciate people who show genuine kindness. A related adverb is genuinely. For example, I'm genuinely happy for you. This means the feeling is honest and sincere. You can also say, he was genuinely surprised by the result. Repeat both examples. Notice how genuinely adds emotional strength and sincerity to the sentence. The next word is sincere. Sincere also means honest and genuine, especially when describing feelings, words, apologies, thanks, and intentions. For example, please accept my sincere apology. This is a formal and respectful way to apologize. You could also say, she gave me sincere advice. This means the advice came from honest concern. Repeat after me. I want to express my sincere gratitude. Again, I want to express my sincere gratitude. Now, create your own sentence with sincere. You might say, he made a sincere effort to correct his mistake. Genuine and sincere are similar, but genuine has a broader meaning. Genuine can describe real objects, natural reactions, honest interest, or authentic feelings. Sincere usually focuses on honesty in a person's words, feelings, or intentions. For example, her smile was genuine, and her apology was sincere. Both sentences describe honesty, but they focus on slightly different things. The next word is thoughtful. Thoughtful can describe someone who considers other people's feelings and needs. It can also describe an idea, response, or decision that shows careful thinking. For example, it was thoughtful of you to remember my birthday. This means the action showed kindness and consideration. You could also say, she gave a thoughtful answer. This means she took time to think carefully before responding. Repeat after me. That was a thoughtful gesture. Again, that was a thoughtful gesture. Now, complete the sentence. It was thoughtful of my friend to. You might say, it was thoughtful of my friend to check on me after the interview. Do not confuse thoughtful with considerate. Although they often overlap, considerate usually emphasizes avoiding inconvenience or discomfort for others. Thoughtful often emphasizes a kind action or careful idea. For example, our neighbors are considerate because they keep the noise low, and they were thoughtful enough to bring us food when we were sick. The next word is insightful. Insightful means showing a deep and clear understanding of a subject or situation. It is commonly used to describe comments, questions, advice, books, discussions, and observations. For example, she made an insightful comment during the meeting. This means her comment helped others understand the issue more deeply. You might also say, the podcast was insightful and gave me a new perspective. Repeat after me. He asked an insightful question. Again, he asked an insightful question. Now, complete this sentence. I found the discussion insightful because. You might say, I found the discussion insightful because it helped me understand the problem from another point of view. A thoughtful answer is careful and considerate. An insightful answer adds a deeper understanding. Imagine someone asks why a team is struggling. A basic answer might be, they need to work harder. A more insightful answer might be, the team is struggling because the responsibilities are unclear and communication is inconsistent. The second answer identifies deeper causes. The next word is relevant. Relevant means directly connected to the subject or situation being discussed. For example, please include only relevant information in the report. This means the report should contain information that supports the main purpose. You could also say, that experience is relevant to the job. This means the experience is useful and connected to the position. Repeat after me. This information is relevant to our discussion. Again, this information is relevant to our discussion. Now, complete the sentence. One relevant example is. Then give an example connected to a topic you know well. The opposite of relevant is irrelevant. Irrelevant means not connected to the main subject. For example, that detail is interesting, but it is irrelevant to the current problem. In conversations, people sometimes include too much information. Knowing how to identify what is relevant can help you communicate more clearly and efficiently. Repeat the contrast. This detail is relevant. That detail is irrelevant. The next word is concise. Concise means clear and brief without unnecessary words. A concise explanation provides enough information but does not become too long or confusing. For example, please give me a concise summary of the meeting. This means the listener wants a short but complete explanation. You might also say, her email was concise and easy to understand. Repeat after me. Try to keep your answer clear and concise. Again, try to keep your answer clear and concise. Now, practice making a long sentence more concise. A long sentence might be, I am writing this email because I wanted to let you know that I will not be able to attend the meeting that is scheduled for tomorrow morning. A more concise version is, I'm unable to attend tomorrow morning's meeting. The next word is elaborate. As a verb, elaborate means to provide more details or explain something more fully. For example, could you elaborate on that point? This means, could you explain that point in more detail? You can also say, she elaborated on her plan during the meeting. Repeat after me. Could you elaborate on what happened? Again, could you elaborate on what happened? Now, imagine someone gives you a vague answer. Ask the person to elaborate. You might say, you mentioned a problem with the schedule. Could you elaborate? Concise and elaborate may seem like opposites, but both are valuable. Sometimes you need a concise answer because time is limited. At other times, you need someone to elaborate because the information is too vague. A strong communicator understands when to be brief and when to provide more detail. Now, let's practice these words in a realistic situation. Imagine that you are discussing a personal improvement plan with a friend. You might say, I'm determined to improve my English, but I'm trying to remain realistic. I know that progress will be gradual, so I need to be consistent and persistent. I'm also trying to become more adaptable because my schedule changes often. A practical plan is essential, and daily speaking practice will be beneficial. I have already noticed a significant improvement in my listening skills. Listen once more. I'm determined to improve my English, but I'm trying to remain realistic. I know that progress will be gradual, so I need to be consistent and persistent. I'm also trying to become more adaptable because my schedule changes often. A practical plan is essential, and daily speaking practice will be beneficial. I have already noticed a significant improvement in my listening skills. Now, imagine a workplace conversation. You could say, my manager is cautious when making important decisions. She is aware of the risks, observant during meetings, and able to notice subtle changes in the team's behavior. Her feedback is always thoughtful, relevant, and insightful. She gives concise instructions, but she is willing to elaborate whenever someone needs more information. Her concern for the team is genuine, and her communication is sincere. Now, it is your turn. Choose 6 words and use them to describe a person, goal, experience, or situation. You could describe yourself, a friend, a coworker, a teacher, or someone you admire. You might say, my friend is adaptable, thoughtful, and observant. She gives sincere advice and often makes insightful comments. She is also persistent, so she rarely gives up when something becomes difficult. Pause and create your own conversations out loud. Remember that learning an advanced word does not only mean knowing its definition. You need to understand its tone. Notice the words that commonly appear near it, and practice using it in realistic sentences. A word becomes part of your active vocabulary when you can use it without translating every idea in your mind. Continue repeating the examples, connect the words to your daily experiences, and use them when you speak or write. Gradual and consistent practice will make a significant difference. The next word is compelling. Compelling describes something that is so interesting, convincing, or powerful that it captures your attention. You can use this word when talking about stories, arguments, reasons, presentations, advertisements, or personal experiences. For example, she gave a compelling explanation for why the project should continue. This means her explanation was strong and persuasive. You could also say, the documentary tells a compelling story. This means the story is powerful enough to hold your attention. Repeat after me. He made a compelling argument. Again, he made a compelling argument. Now, complete this sentence. I found the story compelling because... You might say, I found the story compelling because it was honest, emotional, and realistic. The next word is convincing. Convincing means able to make someone believe that something is true, correct, or worth accepting. For example, her explanation was convincing. This means the listener believed her explanation. You might also say, he gave me a convincing reason to change my mind. A convincing argument is supported by clear details, logic, or evidence. Repeat after me. That sounds convincing. Again, that sounds convincing. Now, imagine that a friend is trying to persuade you to join a course. You could say, your reasons are convincing, but I still need time to decide. Compelling and convincing are similar, but they are not always identical. Something can be compelling because it is emotionally powerful or extremely interesting. Something is convincing when it successfully makes you believe or accept an idea. For example, the speaker told a compelling story and presented convincing evidence. The story captured attention, while the evidence supported the argument. The next word is persuasive. Persuasive means effective at influencing someone's opinion, decision, or behavior. A persuasive person knows how to present ideas clearly and encourage others to agree. For example, she is a persuasive speaker. You could also say, the advertisement was persuasive enough to make me consider buying the product. Repeat after me. He gave a persuasive presentation. Again, he gave a persuasive presentation. Now complete the sentence. A persuasive speaker should... You might say, a persuasive speaker should provide clear reasons and relevant examples. The next word is credible. Credible means believable and trustworthy. It can describe a person, explanation, source, report, or claim. For example, we need information from a credible source. This means the source should have a good reputation and provide reliable information. You could also say, his explanation did not sound credible. This means the explanation was difficult to believe. Repeat after me. The report appears credible. Again, the report appears credible. Now, complete this sentence. I consider a source credible when... You might say, I consider a source credible when it provides accurate information and clear evidence. Credible and reliable are closely connected. A reliable person or system performs consistently and can be depended on. A credible person or source is believable and trustworthy. For example, she is a reliable employee and a credible expert. The first part describes her consistent performance, while the second describes the trust people place in her knowledge. The next word is skeptical. Skeptical means doubtful or not easily convinced. A skeptical person does not immediately believe a claim without evidence. For example, I was skeptical when I first heard about the new program. This means the speaker had doubts. You might also say, she is skeptical of promises that sound too good to be true. Repeat after me. I'm skeptical about that claim. Again, I'm skeptical about that claim. Now, complete the sentence. I would be skeptical if... You might say, I would be skeptical if someone promised instant fluency without practice. A useful structure is skeptical about, as in, I'm skeptical about the results. You may also hear skeptical of, as in, I'm skeptical of that explanation. Skepticism can be helpful when it encourages careful thinking. However, being skeptical does not always mean being negative. It can simply mean that you want more evidence before you make a decision. The next word is assume. Assume means to believe that something is true without having complete proof. For example, I assumed the meeting started at 9, but I was wrong. The speaker believed something without confirming it. You might also say, do not assume that everyone has the same opinion. Repeat after me. I should not have assumed. Again, I should not have assumed. Now, complete this sentence. I assumed that. You might say, I assumed that the store would be open on Sunday. Assume is common in misunderstandings. Imagine that a coworker does not reply to your message. You may assume that the coworker is ignoring you, but the person may simply be busy. A better response would be to ask before reaching a conclusion. You could say, I did not want to make assumptions, so I decided to check with her directly. The noun form is assumption. An assumption is something you believe without complete evidence. For example, that assumption turned out to be incorrect. You can also say, we should not make assumptions based on limited information. Repeat after me. My assumption was wrong. Again, my assumption was wrong. The next word is misinterpret. Misinterpret means to understand something incorrectly. For example, I misinterpreted his silence as disagreement. This means the speaker thought the silence meant one thing, but that interpretation may have been wrong. You could also say, please do not misinterpret my question. I'm only asking for clarification. Repeat after me. I may have misinterpreted the situation. Again, I may have misinterpreted the situation. Now complete the sentence. It is easy to misinterpret. You might say, it is easy to misinterpret a short text message because you cannot hear the person's tone. The noun form is misinterpretation. For example, the disagreement was caused by a misinterpretation. This means someone understood a message, action, or situation incorrectly. In real-life communication, tone, context, and body language help prevent misinterpretation. The next word is clarify. Clarify means to make something clearer or easier to understand. This word is extremely useful in conversations because it helps you avoid confusion without sounding rude. For example, could you clarify what you mean? You might also say, I'd like to clarify one detail before we continue. Repeat after me. Could you clarify the instructions? Again, could you clarify the instructions? Now, imagine that someone gives you an unclear deadline. You could say, could you clarify whether you need the report by Thursday morning or Thursday evening? A related noun is clarification. For example, I need clarification about the schedule. You can also say, thank you for the clarification. This is a polite response after someone explains something more clearly. Repeat after me. Thank you for the clarification. Again, thank you for the clarification. The next word is acknowledge. Acknowledge means to recognize, admit, or show that you are aware of something. For example, he acknowledged that he had made a mistake. This means he admitted the mistake instead of denying it. You can also acknowledge someone's effort. For example, the manager acknowledged the team's hard work. Repeat after me. She acknowledged the problem. Again, she acknowledged the problem. Now, complete the sentence. It is important to acknowledge. You might say, it is important to acknowledge other people's contributions. Acknowledge does not always mean that you agree. It can simply mean that you recognize a fact, feeling, or point of view. For example, I acknowledge your concern, but I see the situation differently. This sentence shows respect while allowing disagreement. The next word is address. As a verb, the address means to deal with or give attention to a problem, concern, or topic. For example, we need to address this issue before it becomes worse. You could also say, the manager addressed the employees' concerns during the meeting. Repeat after me. We need to address the problem immediately. Again, we need to address the problem immediately. Now, complete the sentence. The best way to address this issue is. Then give your own solution. Do not confuse this verb with the noun address, which refers to a location. In advanced conversation, address the issue is a very common phrase. It means to discuss the issue seriously and take action. The next word is resolve. Resolve means to solve a problem, settle a disagreement, or make a final decision. For example, we resolved the problem after a short discussion. You could also say, the company is working to resolve the technical issue. Repeat after me. I hope we can resolve this quickly. Again, I hope we can resolve this quickly. Now, complete the sentence. We resolved the disagreement by. You might say, we resolved the disagreement by listening carefully and finding a compromise. The noun form is resolution. A resolution can be a solution to a problem or a firm decision. For example, we are still looking for a resolution. In another context, people make New Year's resolutions, which are personal decisions or goals for the coming year. In this lesson, focus on the problem-solving meaning. You might say, the customer was satisfied with the final resolution. The next word is compromise. A compromise is an agreement in which each person accepts less than they originally wanted. Compromise is important in relationships, work, family decisions, and negotiations. For example, we reached a compromise about the schedule. Perhaps one person wanted to meet in the morning, and another wanted to meet in the evening, so they agreed to meet in the afternoon. Repeat after me. We need to find a compromise. Again, we need to find a compromise. Now, think of a situation in which two people want different things. Complete this sentence. A fair compromise would be. Compromise can also be used as a verb. You can say, both sides agreed to compromise. This means both sides were willing to adjust their demands. A good compromise does not always make everyone completely happy, but it creates an acceptable solution. The next word is negotiate. Negotiate means to discuss something in order to reach an agreement. People negotiate salaries, prices, contracts, deadlines, responsibilities, and plans. For example, she negotiated a better salary. You could also say, we are negotiating the terms of the agreement. Repeat after me. I need to negotiate a more flexible schedule. Again, I need to negotiate a more flexible schedule. Now, complete this sentence. Before negotiating, it is important to. You might say, before negotiating, it is important to understand your priorities. The noun form is negotiation. For example, the negotiation lasted several hours. A successful negotiation often requires patience, clear communication, realistic expectations, and a willingness to compromise. The next word is prioritize. Prioritize means to decide which tasks, needs, or goals are most important and should receive attention first. For example, I need to prioritize my most urgent tasks. You might also say, we should prioritize customer safety. Repeat after me. I need to prioritize my responsibilities. Again, I need to prioritize my responsibilities. Now complete the sentence. This week, I need to prioritize. Then name something important in your life. The noun is priority. A priority is something more important than other things. For example, my health is my top priority. You can also ask, what is the priority? When several tasks need to be completed. Repeat after me. This is my highest priority. Again, this is my highest priority. The next word is urgent. Urgent describes something that requires immediate attention. For example, I received an urgent message from my manager. You might also say, this repair is urgent because the water is leaking. Repeat after me. This matter is urgent. Again, this matter is urgent. Now, complete the sentence. I would consider a situation urgent if. Urgent and important are not always the same. An urgent task needs immediate attention, while an important task has a major effect on your goals or responsibilities. Some tasks are both urgent and important. Others may feel urgent but have little long-term value. Learning to recognize the difference can improve your time management. The next word is pending. Pending means waiting for a decision, completion, or action. For example, my application is still pending. This means no final decision has been made. You could also say, the payment is pending, or the issue remains pending. Repeat after me. The final decision is still pending. Again, the final decision is still pending. Now, create your own sentence using pending. You might say, my request is pending, so I have not received an answer yet. The next word is tentative. Tentative means not final, not completely certain, or subject to change. For example, we have a tentative meeting date for next Friday. This means the date has been suggested, but it may change. You could also say, our plans are tentative because we are waiting for confirmation. Repeat after me. The schedule is tentative. Again, the schedule is tentative. Now, complete the sentence. We made a tentative plan to. A tentative answer can also sound uncertain. For example, she gave a tentative yes. This means she agreed, but not with complete confidence. In planning, tentative is especially useful because it communicates that an arrangement is not yet final. The next word is confirm. Confirm means to establish that something is correct, final, or definite. For example, please confirm the meeting time. You might also say, I called the restaurant to confirm our reservation. Repeat after me. Could you confirm the details? Again, could you confirm the details? Now, complete this sentence. I need to confirm whether. The noun form is confirmation. For example, I received a confirmation email. You may also say, we are waiting for confirmation. A tentative plan becomes definite after it is confirmed. Listen to this example. The date is tentative, but we expect confirmation tomorrow. The next word is available. Available means free, ready to be used, or able to be contacted. For example, are you available this afternoon? You could also say, the product is currently unavailable, or the information is available online. Repeat after me. I'm available after 6. Again, I'm available after 6. Now, complete the sentence. I'm usually available. A related noun is availability. For example, please let me know your availability. This means the speaker wants to know when you are free. In professional communication, this is a very common word. You might say, I'll check my availability and get back to you. The next word is accessible. Accessible means easy to reach, use, understand, or obtain. For example, the building is accessible by public transportation. You could also say, the information should be accessible to everyone. When describing communication, accessible can mean easy to understand. For example, the speaker explained a complicated topic in an accessible way. Repeat after me. The service is easy and accessible. Again, the service is easy and accessible. Now, complete the sentence. This resource is accessible because accessible and available are different. Something may be available, but not easily accessible. For example, a document may be available online, but if the website is difficult to use, the document is not easily accessible. The next word is affordable. Affordable means reasonably priced and not too expensive for someone to pay. For example, we are looking for an affordable apartment. You might also say, the restaurant offers affordable meals. Repeat after me. The price is affordable. Again, the price is affordable. Now, complete the sentence. I would consider it affordable if. Affordable is different from cheap. Cheap can mean low in price, but it can also suggest poor quality. Affordable focuses on whether the cost is manageable. Saying, the hotel is affordable, often sounds more positive than saying, the hotel is cheap. The next word is worthwhile. Worthwhile means valuable enough to justify the time, money, or effort involved. For example, the course was difficult, but it was worthwhile. You could also say, the trip was expensive, but the experience was worthwhile. Repeat after me. The effort was worthwhile. Again, the effort was worthwhile. Now, complete this sentence. I consider an activity worthwhile when. The next word is rewarding. Rewarding describes an experience that gives satisfaction, meaning, or a sense of achievement. For example, teaching can be a very rewarding career. You might also say, helping my friend solve the problem was rewarding. Repeat after me. The experience was challenging but rewarding. Again, the experience was challenging but rewarding. Now, complete the sentence. I find it rewarding too. Worthwhile and rewarding are similar, but worthwhile emphasizes that something is worth the investment of time, effort, or money. Rewarding emphasizes the positive feeling or satisfaction you receive. For example, volunteering is worthwhile because it helps the community, and it is rewarding because it gives me a sense of purpose. The next word is fulfilling. Fulfilling describes something that gives you deep satisfaction, purpose, or emotional meaning. For example, she finds her work fulfilling. This means the work gives her a strong sense of purpose. You could also say, building strong relationships can be more fulfilling than buying expensive things. Repeat after me. I want a fulfilling career. Again, I want a fulfilling career. Now, complete this sentence. I find it fulfilling when. Rewarding and fulfilling are closely related, but fulfilling often suggests a deeper and more lasting sense of meaning. A task can be rewarding because you receive praise or see quick results. A life choice may be fulfilling because it matches your values and gives you purpose. The next word is meaningful. Meaningful means important, valuable, or connected to a deeper purpose. For example, we had a meaningful conversation. This means the conversation involved honest, important ideas rather than casual small talk. You could also say, she wants to do meaningful work. Repeat after me. That experience was meaningful to me. Again, that experience was meaningful to me. Now, complete the sentence. A meaningful conversation should. The next word is memorable. Memorable describes something easy to remember because it was special, unusual, enjoyable, or important. For example, it was a memorable evening. You might also say, the speaker gave a memorable presentation. Repeat after me. The trip was truly memorable. Again, the trip was truly memorable. Now, complete the sentence. One memorable experience from my life was. Meaningful and memorable are different. An experience can be memorable because it was exciting or unusual, but not necessarily deeply important. An experience is meaningful when it has personal value or significance. Some experiences are both meaningful and memorable. The next word is remarkable. Remarkable means unusual or impressive enough to deserve attention. For example, she made remarkable progress in a short time. You could also say, his ability to remain calm was remarkable. Repeat after me. Her improvement has been remarkable. Again, her improvement has been remarkable. Now, complete the sentence. I think it is remarkable that. The next word is exceptional. Exceptional means unusually excellent or much better than average. For example, the customer service was exceptional. You might also say, she has exceptional communication skills. Repeat after me. He did an exceptional job. Again, he did an exceptional job. Now, complete the sentence. An exceptional employee should. Remarkable emphasizes that something deserves attention because it is impressive or unusual. Exceptional emphasizes extremely high quality. For example, her recovery was remarkable, and the care she received was exceptional. The next word is mediocre. Mediocre means ordinary, average, or not very good. It is often used when something fails to meet expectations. For example, the food was mediocre. This means it was not terrible, but it was not good either. You could also say, the performance was mediocre compared with last year's. Repeat after me. The results were mediocre. Again, the results were mediocre. Now, complete the sentence. I would describe something as mediocre if. Be careful when using mediocre to describe a person directly because it can sound harsh. It is usually safer to describe work, service, quality, or performance. For example, the service was mediocre. Sounds more appropriate than, you are mediocre. The next word is adequate. Adequate means good enough or sufficient for a particular purpose, but not necessarily excellent. For example, the room was small but adequate. This means it met the basic need. You could also say, we have adequate time to finish the task. Repeat after me. The explanation was adequate. Again, the explanation was adequate. Now, complete the sentence. The amount of time was adequate because. Adequate and exceptional are very different in strength. Adequate means acceptable or sufficient. Exceptional means unusually excellent. Imagine a hotel review. The room was adequate, but the service was exceptional. The room met basic expectations, while the service was excellent. The next word is insufficient. Insufficient means not enough for a particular purpose. For example, we had insufficient time to complete the project. You could also say, the evidence was insufficient. Repeat after me. The information is insufficient. Again, the information is insufficient. Now, complete this sentence. The amount was insufficient because. The next word is excessive. Excessive means more than is reasonable, necessary, or acceptable. For example, the noise was excessive. You might also say, the company charged an excessive fee. Repeat after me. The cost seems excessive. Again, the cost seems excessive. Now complete the sentence. I would consider something excessive if. Adequate means enough. Insufficient means not enough. And excessive means too much. Listen to this comparison. 2 hours may be adequate, 20 minutes may be insufficient, and 10 hours may be excessive. Repeat that sentence slowly. Now, let's practice these words in a realistic conversation about a project. You might say, the initial plan was tentative, so we needed to confirm the final schedule. Several tasks were still pending, and one issue required urgent attention. We decided to prioritize the most important problem and negotiate a more realistic deadline. After a detailed discussion, we reached a fair compromise and resolved the disagreement. Listen once more. The initial plan was tentative, so we needed to confirm the final schedule. Several tasks were still pending, and one issue required urgent attention. We decided to prioritize the most important problem and negotiate a more realistic deadline. After a detailed discussion, we reached a fair compromise and resolved the disagreement. Now, imagine that you are evaluating a course. You could say, "The instructor was credible, and her explanations were clear and convincing. The lessons were accessible, the price was affordable, and the exercises were worthwhile." Some activities were challenging, but the overall experience was rewarding and fulfilling. I made remarkable progress, so I would describe the course as exceptional rather than merely adequate. Now, it is your turn. Choose at least 8 words and connect them in conversations about work, study, travel, shopping, or a personal decision. You might say, "I was skeptical about joining the program because the advertisement did not seem convincing. Before making an assumption, the price was affordable, the schedule was flexible, and the benefits seemed worthwhile. After receiving confirmation, I decided to join, and the experience turned out to be extremely rewarding." Pause and create your own conversations out loud. Try to speak in complete sentences. Use the words naturally rather than forcing too many into one idea. When you finish, repeat with a slower pace and clearer pronunciation. Then say it one more time without looking at your notes. This kind of active recall helps move new vocabulary from your passive memory into your active speaking vocabulary. The next word is articulate. Articulate describes someone who can express ideas clearly and effectively. It can also be used as a verb, meaning to communicate a thought in a clear way. For example, she is articulate and confident during meetings. This means she speaks clearly and organizes her ideas well. You could also say, "I understand how I feel, but I'm struggling to articulate it." In this sentence, the speaker finds it difficult to put the feeling into words. Repeat after me. He articulated his concerns clearly. Again, he articulated his concerns clearly. Now, complete this sentence. I find it difficult to articulate. You might say, "I find it difficult to articulate complex ideas when I'm nervous." Remember that being articulate does not mean using the longest or most difficult words. It means expressing your meaning clearly, accurately, and naturally. The next word is coherent. Coherent means clear, logical, and easy to understand because all the ideas connect properly. A coherent explanation has a natural structure. For example, her argument was clear and coherent. You might also say, "I was so tired that I could not give a coherent answer." Repeat after me. Try to organize your thoughts into a coherent response. Again, try to organize your thoughts into a coherent response. Now, think about what makes an explanation coherent. The speaker should stay focused on the main point, connect ideas logically, and avoid unnecessary details. Complete this sentence. A coherent explanation should, you might say, a coherent explanation should present the problem, the cause, and the solution in a logical order. Articulate and coherent are related, but they are not exactly the same. An articulate person communicates skillfully. A coherent message is logically organized and understandable. Someone may have excellent pronunciation, but still give an incoherent answer if the ideas are disorganized. On the other hand, a person can speak slowly and simply while still giving a coherent explanation. Listen to this example. She was articulate, and her presentation was coherent. Repeat it out loud. The next word is ambiguous. Ambiguous means having more than one possible meaning or not being clear enough to interpret confidently. For example, his message was ambiguous, so I did not know whether he agreed or disagreed. You could also say, the instructions are ambiguous and could be interpreted in 2 different ways. Repeat after me. The wording is ambiguous. Again, the wording is ambiguous. Now, complete this sentence. The message seemed ambiguous because... You might say, the message seemed ambiguous because it did not clearly state whether the meeting was canceled. Ambiguous is slightly different from vague. A vague statement does not contain enough detail. An ambiguous statement can have two or more meanings. For example, "I'll see you later" is vague because the time is not specific. The sentence, "I saw the man with the telescope" is ambiguous because it could mean that you used a telescope or that the man had a telescope. In real-life communication, ambiguity often causes misunderstanding, so it is useful to ask for clarification. The next word is straightforward. Straightforward means simple, clear, honest, and not complicated. For example, the application process was straightforward. This means it was easy to understand and complete. You can also describe a person as straightforward. She was straightforward about the problem. This means she spoke honestly and directly. Repeat after me. The instructions were straightforward. Again, the instructions were straightforward. Now, complete the sentence. The process would be more straightforward if... You might say, the process would be more straightforward if... The company provided clear examples. A straightforward answer is direct and easy to understand. It does not avoid the main issue. For example, if someone asks, "Can you finish the report today?" a straightforward answer might be, "No, but I can finish it by tomorrow afternoon." This response is clear, honest, and useful. The next word is transparent. Transparent can literally describe something you can see through, but in conversation, it often means open, honest, and easy to understand. For example, the company should be transparent about its fees. This means the company should clearly explain all costs instead of hiding them. You might also say, "I want to be transparent about my concerns." Repeat after me. We need a transparent process. Again, we need a transparent process. Now, complete this sentence. It is important to be transparent when... You might say, it is important to be transparent when discussing expectations with a new employee. The noun form is transparency. For example, customers appreciate transparency about pricing. Transparency builds trust because people understand what is happening and why decisions are being made. The next word is accountable. Accountable means responsible for your actions, decisions, or results. If you are accountable, you accept responsibility instead of blaming others. For example, managers should be accountable for the decisions they make. You could also say, "I made a mistake and I need to hold myself accountable." Repeat after me. Everyone should be accountable for their work. Again, everyone should be accountable for their work. Now, complete the sentence. I hold myself accountable by... You might say, I hold myself accountable by reviewing my goals every week. A related noun is accountability. For example, accountability helps teams perform more effectively. You may also hear the phrase, hold someone accountable. This means making sure the person accepts responsibility. For example, the company promised to hold the manager accountable for the error. The next word is proactive. Proactive describes someone who takes action before a problem becomes serious or before someone has to give instructions. For example, she is proactive and solves small issues before they become major problems. You could also say, I'm trying to be proactive about my health by exercising regularly. Repeat after me. It is better to be proactive than reactive. Again, it is better to be proactive than reactive. Now, complete this sentence. I can be more proactive by... You might say, I can be more proactive by preparing for meetings in advance. Reactive means responding only after something happens. Imagine that a pipe begins to leak. A proactive homeowner checks the plumbing regularly and repairs small problems early. A reactive homeowner waits until water damages the room. In many situations, proactive behavior saves time, money, and stress. The next word is resourceful. Resourceful describes someone who is good at finding practical and creative ways to solve problems, especially with limited time, money, or tools. For example, she is resourceful and always finds a way to complete the task. You might also say, "We had very little equipment, but our team was resourceful." Repeat after me. He is calm, practical, and resourceful. Again, he is calm, practical, and resourceful. Now, complete the sentence. A resourceful person would. You might say, a resourceful person would look for another solution instead of immediately giving up. Resourceful people use what is available. Imagine that your phone battery dies while you are traveling in an unfamiliar area. A resourceful person might ask a store employee for directions, borrow a charger, use a public map, or write down the address. The person does not panic. Instead, the person carefully considers available options. The next word is competent. Competent means having enough skill, knowledge, or ability to do something successfully. For example, she is a competent and experienced manager. You might also say, the technician was competent and fixed the problem quickly. Repeat after me. He is fully competent to handle the responsibility. Again, he is fully competent to handle the responsibility. Now, complete this sentence. A competent employee should be able to. You might say, a competent employee should be able to understand instructions and complete tasks accurately. Competent does not necessarily mean exceptional. It means capable and qualified. Someone can be competent without being the very best. For example, the service was competent but not exceptional. This means the employee performed the job adequately, but the experience was not unusually impressive. The next word is capable. Capable means having the ability, qualities, or potential to do something. For example, I know you are capable of handling this situation. You could also say, this device is capable of storing thousands of files. Repeat after me. She is capable of making her own decisions. Again, she is capable of making her own decisions. Now, complete the sentence. I am capable of. Choose something you can do well, or something you are learning to do. You might say, I am capable of expressing my ideas clearly when I stay calm. Capable is often followed by of and an activity ending in ing. For example, he is capable of leading the team. Competent often describes current skill in a particular role, while capable can emphasize ability or potential. You might say, she is capable of becoming an exceptional leader, and she is already competent in her current position. The next word is versatile. Versatile describes a person or thing that can perform many different functions or adapt to many situations. For example, she is a versatile employee who can manage several types of projects. You could also say, a black jacket is versatile because you can wear it in many different situations. Repeat after me. This is a simple and versatile tool. Again, this is a simple and versatile tool. Now, complete the sentence. I consider this useful and versatile because. In language learning, versatile words are words that can be used in many contexts. For example, issue is versatile because it can describe a problem, a topic, or a subject of concern. Building a versatile vocabulary helps you respond more naturally in unexpected situations. The next word is resilient. Resilient describes someone or something able to recover after difficulty. stress, disappointment, or change. For example, she remained resilient after losing her job and began looking for new opportunities. You might also say, children can be surprisingly resilient. Repeat after me. He is resilient and recovers quickly from setbacks. Again, he is resilient and recovers quickly from setbacks. Now, complete this sentence. I became more resilient after. You might say, I became more resilient after learning how to handle failure without giving up. Resilience is the noun form. For example, learning from failure builds resilience. Resilience does not mean that a person never feels upset. It means the person eventually recovers, adapts, and continues moving forward. The next word is vulnerable. Vulnerable means open to emotional pain, physical harm, criticism, or risk. For example, she felt vulnerable when she shared her personal experience. This means she felt emotionally exposed because others could judge or hurt her. You could also say, older adults may be more vulnerable to certain illnesses. Repeat after me. It is difficult to feel vulnerable. Again, it is difficult to feel vulnerable. Now, complete this sentence. I feel vulnerable when. Choose an example that feels comfortable for you to say. Vulnerability is not always weakness. In relationships, honest vulnerability can build trust because people share their real feelings instead of pretending. For example, he was vulnerable enough to admit that he needed help. This required courage and honesty. The next word is reserved. Reserved describes someone who is quiet and does not easily express thoughts or emotions. For example, he is friendly but reserved around new people. You might also say, she remained reserved during the discussion and did not share much. Repeat after me. I tend to be reserved in unfamiliar situations. Again, I tend to be reserved in unfamiliar situations. Now, complete this sentence. A reserved person may. Reserved does not necessarily mean unfriendly. A reserved person may simply need more time to feel comfortable. Compare these sentences. He was rude and refused to speak to anyone. And he was reserved but listened politely. The second person is quiet, but not disrespectful. The next word is outspoken. Outspoken describes someone who expresses opinions openly and directly, especially on important or controversial subjects. For example, she is outspoken about workplace equality. You might also say, he has always been outspoken and unafraid to challenge bad decisions. Repeat after me. She is outspoken about issues she cares about. Again, she is outspoken about issues she cares about. Now, complete the sentence. Someone may be outspoken when. Outspoken can be positive when a person speaks honestly and courageously. However, it can also suggest that someone expresses opinions very strongly. A person can be outspoken while still being respectful. The key is to communicate directly without insulting others. The next word is assertive. Assertive means expressing your needs, opinions, and boundaries clearly and confidently while respecting other people. For example, you need to be assertive when discussing your workload. You could also say, she gave an assertive but polite response. Repeat after me. I can be assertive without being rude. Again, I can be assertive without being rude. Now, complete the sentence. An assertive response would be, assertive is different from aggressive. An assertive person communicates clearly and respectfully. An aggressive person may pressure, threaten, or disrespect others. Imagine that a coworker repeatedly gives you extra work. A passive response might be, okay, I'll do everything, even when you do not have time. An aggressive response might be, stop giving me your work. This is ridiculous. An assertive response could be, I'm currently managing several deadlines, so I'm not able to take on another task today. This sentence is direct, calm, and respectful. The next word is diplomatic. Diplomatic means careful and skillful in communicating sensitive ideas without causing unnecessary offense or conflict. For example, she gave a diplomatic answer when asked about the disagreement. You might also say, "We need to be diplomatic when discussing this issue with the client." Repeat after me. He handled the situation in a diplomatic way. Again, he handled the situation in a diplomatic way. Now, complete this sentence. A diplomatic response might be, imagine that a friend asks whether you like a meal that you did not enjoy. A harsh answer would be, "No, it tastes terrible." A diplomatic answer might be, "It's different from what I usually eat, but I appreciate you making it." A diplomatic response communicates honestly without creating unnecessary hurt. The next word is tactful. Tactful means careful not to say or do something that could embarrass, upset, or offend someone. For example, she was tactful when she gave me feedback. You could also say, try to be tactful when discussing someone's mistake. Repeat after me. He gave a tactful response. Again, he gave a tactful response. Now, complete the sentence. A tactful way to say this would be, diplomatic and tactful are closely related. Diplomatic often involves managing disagreement or sensitive relationships. Tactful focuses on choosing words carefully to protect someone's feelings. For example, the manager was diplomatic during the negotiation and tactful when discussing the employee's performance. The next word is blunt. Blunt means very direct, sometimes in a way that sounds rude or insensitive. For example, he was blunt about the quality of my work. You might also say, I appreciate honesty, but her response was unnecessarily blunt. Repeat after me. His comment was honest but blunt. Again. His comment was honest but blunt. Now, complete this sentence. A blunt response would be, being blunt is not always bad. In an emergency or urgent situation, direct language can be useful. However, in sensitive conversations, a tactful or diplomatic response is usually more effective. Compare these examples. This report is bad. And, this report needs clearer organization and more accurate data. The first response is blunt and unhelpful. The second is specific, constructive, and professional. The next word is constructive. Constructive means useful and intended to improve a situation. It is commonly used in the phrase constructive feedback. For example, my manager gave me constructive feedback about my presentation. This means the feedback identified areas for improvement and offered helpful direction. You could also say, we had a constructive conversation about the problem. Repeat after me. Constructive criticism can help you improve. Again, constructive criticism can help you improve. Now complete the sentence. Feedback is constructive when constructive feedback should be specific, respectful, and practical. Saying, your presentation was boring, is not constructive because it does not explain what to change. Saying, your main points were useful, but adding shorter examples and varying your tone would make the presentation more engaging, is constructive. The next word is defensive. Defensive describes someone who reacts as though they are being attacked, especially when receiving criticism or questions. For example, he became defensive when I asked about the mistake. You might also say, try not to become defensive when someone gives you helpful feedback. Repeat after me. I became defensive because I felt embarrassed. Again, I became defensive because I felt embarrassed. Now, complete this sentence. People may become defensive when a defensive response might be, it wasn't my fault, and everyone else made mistakes too. A more open response could be, I understand your concern. Let me review what happened and see how I can correct it. The second response shows accountability and willingness to improve. The next word is receptive. Receptive means willing to listen to, consider, or accept new ideas, advice, or feedback. For example, she was receptive to my suggestion. You might also say, good leaders are receptive to constructive criticism. Repeat after me. I'm receptive to new ideas. Again, I'm receptive to new ideas. Now, complete the sentence. I try to be receptive when. Receptive is almost the opposite of defensive. A defensive person may reject feedback immediately. A receptive person listens carefully and considers whether the feedback is useful. Being receptive does not mean agreeing with everything. It means being open enough to evaluate the idea fairly. The next word is open-minded. Open-minded describes someone willing to consider different ideas, experiences, and opinions. For example, try to remain open-minded during the discussion. You could also say, she is open-minded and enjoys learning about other cultures. Repeat after me. I want to be more open-minded. Again, I want to be more open-minded. Now, complete this sentence. An open-minded person would. Open-minded does not mean accepting every claim without evidence. You can be open-minded and skeptical at the same time. You can listen respectfully, consider the evidence, and then form your own conclusion. The next word is biased. Biased means unfairly influenced in favor of or against a person, group, or idea. For example, the review seemed biased because the writer ignored all the positive details. You could also say, we should examine whether our decision is biased. Repeat after me. The report may be biased. Again, the report may be biased. Now complete the sentence. A decision could be biased if. Bias can be conscious or unconscious. Sometimes people recognize their preferences, but at other times they are not aware of them. This is why gathering information from several credible sources can help you form a more balanced opinion. The next word is objective. Objective means based on facts rather than personal feelings or preferences. For example, we need an objective evaluation of the situation. You might also say, try to remain objective when reviewing the results. Repeat after me. The decision should be objective. Again, the decision should be objective. Now, complete this sentence. To remain objective. I should. The opposite is subjective. Subjective means based on personal opinions, feelings, or experiences. For example, taste in music is subjective. There is no single correct answer because different people have different preferences. Compare these sentences. The room is 20 feet long is objective because it can be measured. The room is beautiful is subjective because it expresses an opinion. The next word is balanced. Balanced means fair, reasonable, and giving proper attention to different sides or needs. For example, the article presented a balanced view of the issue. You could also say, I'm trying to maintain a balanced lifestyle. Repeat after me. We need a balanced approach. Again, we need a balanced approach. Now, complete the sentence. A balanced decision should consider. A balanced opinion recognizes complexity. Instead of saying that something is completely good or completely bad, you may acknowledge both advantages and disadvantages. For example, working from home is convenient and flexible, but it can also feel isolating. That is a balanced observation. The next word is controversial. Controversial describes a subject, decision, or opinion that causes strong disagreement. For example, the new policy is controversial. You might also say, They discussed several controversial topics. Repeat after me. It is a controversial issue. Again, it is a controversial issue. Now, complete the sentence. A topic may become controversial when discussing controversial issues, it is helpful to remain respectful, objective, and open-minded. You can disagree without becoming aggressive. You might say, I understand why some people support that view, but I have a different perspective. The next word is sensitive. Sensitive can describe a topic that requires careful communication because it may cause emotional pain, embarrassment, or conflict. For example, money can be a sensitive topic. You could also say, this is a sensitive issue, so we should discuss it privately. Repeat after me. We need to handle this situation carefully because it is sensitive. Again, we need to handle this situation carefully because it is sensitive. Now, complete this sentence. A sensitive conversation should. Sensitive can also describe someone who notices or reacts strongly to emotions, criticism, sound, light, or physical conditions. For example, she is sensitive to loud noise, or he is sensitive to criticism. The meaning depends on context. The next word is delicate. Delicate means requiring careful treatment because something could easily be damaged, disturbed, or made worse. For example, this is a delicate situation. You might also say, the negotiations are at a delicate stage. Repeat after me. We need to handle the matter delicately. Again, we need to handle the matter delicately. Now, complete the sentence. The situation was delicate because. Sensitive and delicate often appear in similar situations. A sensitive topic may affect people emotionally. A delicate situation requires careful action because one mistake could create a larger problem. The next word is inappropriate. Inappropriate means unsuitable or unacceptable for a particular situation. We practiced this word earlier as the opposite of appropriate. But now, let's explore it more deeply. For example, that joke was inappropriate for a professional meeting. You could also say, his reaction was inappropriate given the seriousness of the situation. Repeat after me. The comment was inappropriate. Again, the comment was inappropriate. Now, complete the sentence. It would be inappropriate to. The next word is unacceptable. Unacceptable means so bad, unfair, or inappropriate that it cannot be approved or tolerated. It is stronger than inappropriate. For example, disrespectful behavior is unacceptable. You might also say, the delay was unacceptable because no one informed the customers. Repeat after me. This level of service is unacceptable. Again, this level of service is unacceptable. Now, complete this sentence. I would consider the behavior unacceptable if. Appropriate describes what fits a situation. Inappropriate describes what does not fit. Unacceptable describes behavior or quality that crosses a serious limit. For example, wearing casual clothing to a formal event may be inappropriate. Insulting another guest may be unacceptable. The next word is tolerate. Tolerate means to accept or endure something unpleasant without stopping it. For example, I cannot tolerate that level of noise. You could also say, the company will not tolerate harassment. Repeat after me. I can tolerate minor delays, but not repeated cancellations. Again, I can tolerate minor delays, but not repeated cancellations. Now, complete the sentence. I can tolerate. Then complete another sentence. I cannot tolerate. The noun is tolerance. Tolerance can mean the ability to endure something or the willingness to accept differences. For example, I have a low tolerance for unnecessary noise. And respect and tolerance are important in diverse communities. The next word is confront. Confront means to face a difficult person, problem, or truth directly. For example, I decided to confront the issue instead of ignoring it. You might also say, she confronted her coworker about the repeated mistakes. Repeat after me. Sometimes we need to confront difficult problems. Again, sometimes we need to confront difficult problems. Now, complete this sentence. I would confront the problem by. Confront does not always mean starting an argument. It can mean addressing something honestly and directly. A calm confrontation might begin with, I'd like to discuss something that has been affecting our work. The next word is avoid. Avoid means to stay away from something or prevent it from happening. For example, I try to avoid unnecessary conflict. You could also say, leave early to avoid heavy traffic. Repeat after me. We need to avoid making assumptions. Again, we need to avoid making assumptions. Now complete the sentence. I try to avoid. Avoiding a minor argument can be wise, but avoiding every difficult conversation may allow problems to continue. Strong communication requires judgment. Sometimes you should avoid unnecessary conflict. At other times, you should confront the issue calmly and constructively. Now, let's combine several of these words in a realistic workplace situation. Imagine that a team has missed an important deadline. You could say, the manager was straightforward and transparent about the seriousness of the problem. She held the team accountable, but her feedback remained constructive and tactful. At first, one employee became defensive, while another was receptive and asked how the process could be improved. The manager encouraged everyone to be proactive, resourceful, and objective. Instead of blaming one person, the team discussed the issue openly and created a balanced plan. Listen once more. The manager was straightforward and transparent about the seriousness of the problem. She held the team accountable, but her feedback remained constructive and tactful. At first, one employee became defensive, while another was receptive and asked how the process could be improved. The manager encouraged everyone to be proactive, resourceful, and objective. Instead of blaming one person, the team discussed the issue openly and created a balanced plan. Now, imagine a difficult personal conversation. You might say, the subject was sensitive and the situation was delicate, so I tried to be diplomatic and tactful. I wanted to be assertive without sounding aggressive or blunt. I clearly articulated my concerns, acknowledged the other person's feelings, and remained open-minded. The conversation was uncomfortable, but we avoided unnecessary conflict and addressed the real problem. Now, it is your turn to practice. Choose at least 10 words and use them to describe a workplace conversation, family disagreement, customer service problem, or personal challenge. You could say, I had to confront a sensitive issue with a coworker. I was nervous because he sometimes becomes defensive, so I planned a tactful and diplomatic response. I tried to remain objective, articulate my concerns clearly, and give constructive feedback. Fortunately, he was receptive and accountable. We had a coherent conversation and created a straightforward solution. Pause and create your own conversations. First, speak slowly and focus on accuracy. Then repeat it with a more natural rhythm. Finally, try to say the same idea again, using slightly different words. You do not need to memorize one perfect sentence. Your goal is to become versatile and resourceful with the vocabulary, so you can express the same meaning in several natural ways. The next word is anticipate. Anticipate means to expect that something will happen and prepare for it in advance. For example, we anticipate heavy traffic this evening, so we should leave early. You could also say, I anticipated that the conversation would be difficult, so I prepared carefully. Repeat after me. It is helpful to anticipate possible problems. Again, It is helpful to anticipate possible problems. Now, complete this sentence. I usually try to anticipate. You might say, I usually try to anticipate questions before an important presentation. The next word is unpredictable. Unpredictable describes something that is difficult or impossible to know in advance. For example, the weather has been unpredictable this week. You could also say, customer behavior can be unpredictable. Repeat after me. The situation became unpredictable. Again, the situation became unpredictable. Now, complete the sentence. Life can be unpredictable when an unpredictable situation may require you to remain calm, flexible, adaptable, and resourceful. The next word is inevitable. Inevitable means certain to happen and impossible to avoid. For example, some mistakes are inevitable when you are learning something new. You might also say, change is inevitable. Repeat after me. Occasional difficulties are inevitable. Again, occasional difficulties are inevitable. Now, complete this sentence. It is inevitable that. You might say, it is inevitable that plans will sometimes change. Inevitable does not mean that you should stop preparing. It means you should recognize that some events cannot be prevented. The next word is manageable. Manageable means possible to control, organize, or complete without excessive difficulty. For example, the project seemed overwhelming at first, but dividing it into smaller tasks made it manageable. You could also say, the monthly payment is manageable. Repeat after me. The workload is challenging but manageable. Again, the workload is challenging but manageable. Now, complete the sentence. I can make this task more manageable by. You might say, I can make this task more manageable by setting smaller daily goals. The opposite is unmanageable. Unmanageable describes something that is too difficult to control or handle. For example, my schedule became unmanageable when I accepted too many responsibilities. Compare these sentences. The situation is difficult but manageable, and the situation has become completely unmanageable. The first suggests that a solution is still possible. The second suggests that serious changes are necessary. The next word is sustainable. Sustainable means able to continue over a long period without causing serious problems or using too many resources. For example, studying 6 hours every night may not be sustainable if you also work full-time. You might also say, we need a sustainable solution, not a temporary one. Repeat after me. The routine should be realistic and sustainable. Again, the routine should be realistic and sustainable. Now, complete this sentence. A sustainable habit should. You might say, a sustainable habit should fit naturally into your daily schedule. The next word is temporary. Temporary means lasting for only a limited period. For example, this arrangement is temporary until we find a permanent solution. You could also say, the store is temporarily closed. Repeat after me. The problem is only temporary. Again, the problem is only temporary. Now, complete the sentence. This situation is temporary because. The opposite is permanent. Permanent means continuing for a very long time or intended not to change. For example, moving to this city is a permanent decision. Listen to the contrast. We need a temporary solution today and a permanent solution for the future. The next word is feasible. Feasible means possible and practical to do successfully. For example, the idea sounds interesting, but is it financially feasible? You might also say, completing the work by Friday is feasible if everyone contributes. Repeat after me. We need to determine whether the plan is feasible. Again, we need to determine whether the plan is feasible. Now, complete this sentence. The plan would be feasible if. You might say, the plan would be feasible if we had more time and a larger budget. Feasible, realistic, and practical are related. A realistic plan is based on actual conditions. A practical plan works well in real life. A feasible plan can actually be completed with the available resources. For example, the proposal is realistic and practical, but it may not be financially feasible. The next word is consequence. A consequence is a result or effect of an action, especially one that is serious or important. For example, every decision has consequences. You could also say, missing the deadline could have serious consequences. Repeat after me. We should consider the possible consequences. Again, we should consider the possible consequences. Now, complete this sentence. One possible consequence of this decision is. A consequence can be positive or negative, although the word often appears in negative situations. For example, improved confidence was a positive consequence of regular speaking practice. In daily conversation, considering consequences helps you make more thoughtful and responsible decisions. The next word is implication. An implication is a possible effect, meaning, or result that is not always stated directly. For example, we need to understand the financial implications of this decision. You might also say, his comment had a serious implication. Repeat after me. The decision may have long-term implications. Again, the decision may have long-term implications. Consequence usually refers to a direct result. Implication often refers to a possible broader effect or hidden meaning. The next word is perspective. Perspective means a particular way of thinking about or viewing a situation. For example, try to see the problem from her perspective. You could also say, traveling gave me a new perspective on life. Repeat after me. I understand your perspective. Again, I understand your perspective. Now, complete the sentence. From my perspective, then share an opinion. You might say, from my perspective, clear communication is more important than using complicated vocabulary. The next word is misconception. A misconception is an incorrect belief or idea. For example, a common misconception is that advanced English must always sound formal. You might also say, the lesson corrected several misconceptions. Repeat after me. That is a common misconception. Again, that is a common misconception. Now, complete this sentence. One misconception about learning English is. You might say, one misconception about learning English is that you should never make mistakes. The next word is distinction. A distinction is a clear difference between two similar things. For example, there is an important distinction between being confident and being arrogant. You could also say, many learners do not recognize the distinction between formal and informal language. Repeat after me. We need to understand the distinction. Again, we need to understand the distinction. Now, think of two words from this lesson that are similar but not identical. Explain the distinction between them. You might compare hesitant and reluctant, efficient and effective, or meaningful and memorable. The next word is conventional. Conventional means traditional, usual, or based on common practices. For example, they chose a conventional approach to solving the problem. You might also say, he has a conventional office job. Repeat after me. That is the conventional way of doing it. Again, that is the conventional way of doing it. The opposite is unconventional. Unconventional means different from what is usual or traditional. For example, she found an unconventional but effective solution. Repeat after me. His approach was unconventional. Again, his approach was unconventional. An unconventional idea is not necessarily bad. It may be creative, innovative, or simply unfamiliar. The next word is innovative. Innovative means introducing new ideas, methods, or solutions. For example, the company developed an innovative way to reduce waste. You could also say, her teaching method is simple but innovative. Repeat after me. We need a more innovative solution. Again, we need a more innovative solution. Now, complete this sentence. An innovative idea could, conventional, unconventional, and innovative can be compared in one situation. A conventional solution follows the usual method. An unconventional solution is different from the usual method. An innovative solution introduces a useful new idea. Not every unconventional idea is innovative, because being different does not automatically make something useful. Now, let's practice the vocabulary in one connected example. Imagine that you are developing a new daily routine. You might say, I anticipated that the first week would be challenging because my schedule is unpredictable. Some interruptions were inevitable, but I divided my goals into manageable tasks. I wanted the routine to be sustainable rather than temporary, so I created a realistic and feasible plan. I also considered the possible consequences of doing too much too quickly. From my perspective, gradual progress is more effective than an intense routine that becomes unmanageable. Listen again. I anticipated that the first week would be challenging because my schedule is unpredictable. Some interruptions were inevitable, but I divided my goals into manageable tasks. I wanted the routine to be sustainable rather than temporary, so I created a realistic and feasible plan. I also considered the possible consequences of doing too much too quickly. From my perspective, gradual progress is more effective than an intense routine that becomes unmanageable. Now, create your own conversational practice exercise using at least 7 of these words. You might say, I had a misconception that advanced vocabulary had to be formal and complicated. This lesson helped me understand the distinction between difficult words and useful words. From my perspective, the most sustainable method is to learn vocabulary through realistic situations. A conventional method may focus only on definitions, but a more innovative approach includes listening, repetition, examples, and active speaking practice. Now take a moment to reflect on all the vocabulary you have studied throughout this lesson. You practiced words for describing difficulty, emotions, decisions, people, communication, work, planning, conflict, progress, quality, and personal growth. You also compared similar words so that you could understand the subtle distinctions between them. This is essential because advanced vocabulary is not only about learning more words, it is about choosing the most accurate, appropriate, and natural word for each situation. As a final practice exercise, think about a recent experience from your own life. It could be a work problem, a personal decision, a difficult conversation, a new goal, or an unexpected change. Describe the situation using advanced vocabulary from this lesson. Explain what happened, how you felt, what made the situation challenging, how you responded, and what you learned. Try to use words such as overwhelmed, hesitant, reasonable, reliable, adaptable, persistent, cautious, genuine, relevant, persuasive, accountable, proactive, resilient, assertive, constructive, sustainable, feasible, consequence, and perspective. You might say, I recently accepted a challenging responsibility at work. At first, I felt overwhelmed and hesitant because the instructions were vague. I decided to be proactive and asked my manager to clarify the expectations. She gave me specific and constructive feedback, which made the project more manageable. I remained persistent, adaptable, and accountable throughout the process. The experience was demanding, but it was also worthwhile and rewarding. From my perspective, the most important lesson was that asking clear questions is a sign of responsibility, not weakness. Now, create your own version. Speak slowly the first time and focus on accuracy. The second time, speak with a more natural rhythm. The third time, try to express the same experience without reading your notes. You may not remember every word immediately, and that is completely normal. Vocabulary becomes active through gradual, consistent, and meaningful use. Each time you use a new word in a real sentence, you strengthen your ability to recognize it, remember it, and use it confidently in future conversations. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this lesson. Today, you learned a wide range of advanced English vocabulary that can help you express your thoughts, feelings, opinions, and experiences more clearly in real-life conversations. Remember, you do not need to memorize every word in one day. Choose a few words from this lesson, write your own sentences with them, and use them when you speak. Listen to this lesson again, repeat the practice examples out loud, and pay attention to how each word is used in context. With consistent practice, these advanced words will gradually become a natural part of your active vocabulary. If you found this lesson helpful, please like the video, subscribe to English in Minutes 2.0, and press the bell icon so you never miss our upcoming English learning videos. You can also share this lesson with anyone who wants to improve their English vocabulary and speak with greater confidence. Keep practicing, remain patient with yourself, and remember that every new word brings you one step closer to fluent and natural English. Thank you again for learning with me today. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next lesson.